guys, we've got some wonderful, well, a wonderful guest coming your way. If you are fans, and I know that you are, of the show Insecure, let me see the hands up. Let me see the hands up. Let me see all the love. You ain't late. You good, April. But let's see the love for the show Insecure. Let me see it. Let me see it. Because we have one of the mega minds behind this show. I'm so excited. I love his work. And he wrote and directed this wonderful film on Netflix called Uncorked. If you have not seen it, baby, listen, I don't care what you got planned for tonight and who you got planned to do it with. You must watch Uncorked. It's so good. It's so good. Nicole just said, thank you, everyone. Can't wait for Prentice. I know, he's just great. So Prentice, if you were in the room, please send me the request, my dear friend. Prentice Penny. Prentice, I actually discovered his show and his gifts, his talents and everything on, I want to say TBS, TNT, one of those. He had this really great show on there. Okay, you're not in here yet. But he has been on so many different projects. If you guys go to, hey, AJ Calloway, mwah, my dear friend, hey, buddy. If you check him out also on IMDb, Internet Movie Database, you can definitely see all of his many credits. So Prentice Penny is coming up. And then at the end of today's chat, if we have the time, because God knows I could talk to Prentice all day, but if we have the time, I wanted to read a piece that I wrote. We're talking about the power of words, the power of words. And so we are talking about how words can impact. We are talking about, there he is. I'll tell y'all more in a minute. Hold on, because we're about to get Prentice in the room. Prentice in the room. Ooh, I know I should act cool, but you know, whatever. What's going on,
hey,
brother?
Hey, what's up?
How you, man?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm
Of
doing
course.
great.
Of course.
Yeah. So guys, let me publicly tell you, Prentice, thank you. Prentice is one of the few people who has hired me on both sides of the camera. So I had the great pleasure of directing the show in a show on Insecure last season called Kevin. And then Prentice actually played grown-up Kevin. And one of the funniest things I've ever seen anybody do, my sister Alexis just gave you a bunch of praise, by the way. But one of the funniest things I've ever seen anybody do was Prentice ran around the set and then hopped into a casket. Hysterical. And then, as you guys know, I did a guest appearance on Insecure this season that Jay actually directed. Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to work with Prentice as a director. And then we were in Mexico together, and he was sitting there eating his breakfast, and I was like, I just text him a hello. Because you know when folks give you, he didn't see me, so I can't say that he gave me the I don't want to be bothered look, because he knew that wasn't going to fly. Nah. So he just had the general overall, let me just enjoy myself space.
But you know, you know what's so funny about that is I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but I was like, I'm married, I got 3 kids, I never get to go on a vacation by myself. I mean, not even like even like a work vacation and have breakfast quiet. Like I couldn't even imagine those 4 days where I was just like, this is so a treat. I'm gonna just enjoy it. So if I did that, I apologize.
Because you sure look like I'm gonna just eat my orange, drink my juice. I don't see nobody.
You know, you gotta mentally just. I'm in a bubble. Nobody sees me. I'm just invisible.
Right. No, you was definitely the boy in the plastic bubble. You was definitely living that life. I did. Alexa said, "Let the man eat." I did. I left him alone, and I got back to my suite, and then I sent him a text saying, "Just saw you. What up, bro?" And that was it. So, hey, brother. Hey. Let's talk about some words and you and how you are so, I couldn't get through Uncorked, as you know, without texting you darn near every other scene. Truth be told, the opening credits hadn't finished. And I was like, yo, this opening sequence. What do you love about words, Prentice?
I mean, obviously words are super powerful, you know. I
Mm,
mean, you know, when you speak them, obviously people react, you know, to
mm,
uh how, you know, a simple word, how you say that word, the inflection that word gives has a lot of power, you know. I mean, it's
yeah,
even biblical, right? And so to like to piggyback on that, and then to add that, you know, when you are writing a script, you're trying to use those things, right, to create the picture in your head, the way characters should move, the way characters should think. And you know, I mean, you never want to be like working in this business and be thinking that you're curing cancer, because obviously there are real frontline people doing real work to save lives. But you're definitely, I think, trying to impact lives, and you're definitely trying
absolutely.
to like challenge our lives and make us, the written word throughout time is about us, you know, questioning our lives and making us think differently about our lives. So, I
Hmm.
mean, words are powerful, and even from especially in the business we're in, every word you use has context. Every word you're using has impact. So
Yeah.
you're always thinking about, you know, page count, and am I using the right amount of words, or am I using too many words or not enough words to convey what this needs to feel like? So,
Hmm.
from a career standpoint, words are everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned just kind of our industry and what we do and how it has, in its own very unique way, its place in the hallowed halls of essentialness. We, as an industry, throughout time, you know, have been the go-to when it comes to the world going through hell, the world going through pain, the world going through turning and flipping upside down. The entertainment industry, in some way, has been the go to for comfort, for peace, for escape, for laughter,
Yeah.
and all sorts of things. So in that regard, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and say, on behalf of everybody on here and beyond, insecure is essential.
I mean, you know, what's so funny is like, you know, we didn't really realize that until we kind of got into this pandemic. That was one of the things Issa and I were really wrestling with, was trying to find our place right now. There seemed to be so many, you know, in the wake of the George Floyd stuff, and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and you're just
Yeah,
trying to find your spot and not wanting to be like, hey, it's about this thing, watch this show,
right.
right? But what you realize is that in the wake of all that heaviness, that the show not only gave people a moment to like talk about something else and feel something
Hmm.
else beside
Hmm.
anger and rage, but I think to
Yes.
also see ourselves be in love, and see ourselves in friendships, and see ourselves in relationships, and see our humanity in a time right now where like just trying beyond just mattering, right?
Yes.
And so I think
Oh,
like
say it again.
you know what I mean? So I
Yes.
think East and I think we're both incredibly humbled that the show was resonating with people as much as it was, because we made the show. Obviously, I mean, as you know, like, you were a part of it last year,
Yeah.
so it was in before all this was happening, obviously.
Yeah.
But the irony of America is it's kind of always happening, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
Definitely. When I'm going to shift over now to Uncorked, but before I do, congratulations to you on the Emmy nomination.
Thank you.
Oh,
You
to
too.
you,
You
to
too. You in
Issa.
there too. You in there too.
Well, you know, thank you. I feel like how they say, where I was on the team, I got a ring because I was on the right team at the right time.
Hey,
But
sometimes that's
I
hey.
ain't put no real minutes in.
Nah, you've been putting in minutes. You've been putting in minutes from years now, so that's not even true. We're
Well,
not
thank
we're not
you.
even doing that.
Thank you. When you were working on Uncorked, you know, yes, and I love how you said it. We have to do more than matter. And so to have a story of this young black man who wants to be a sommelier, what? And the people around him. I mean, how did that pitch go in your own mind first
So
before
it
you
started.
dared tell anybody?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I knew that I wanted to write a movie. I mean, you know, I've worked in television and you've worked in television. And, you know, like a lot of times as a writer on that side, you know, you're writing in the showrunner's voice all the time. Even if you're on
Right.
staff, you're kind of trying to mimic their voice and style. And so at a similar time, I was doing that on other shows, but I feel like I hadn't found my voice to the point of words, right? I hadn't found my voice. And so I was being asked to write a lot of like remakes and reboots of movies. And I felt like if I do start doing that right now, without finding my voice, I feel like I'll kind of just be like a parrot. I'll just kind of mimic people, but I don't know what I'll bring to the table. And so I purposely didn't write any movies until I felt I had something to actually say. And I became a father. And as I became a father, it made me examine my relationship with my father. And I started to understand him more as just a guy trying to figure it out than like my quote unquote my father, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write about that experience. And I felt like Black men on camera never get to have their Goodwill Huntings, their Manchester by the Seas, their Ladybirds. So I wanted to just see Black men and I wanted to see a father-son story where their conflict was not about the father being absent. They just had an issue as two men. And I didn't want to like paint, because I was like, my father was around, my friends' fathers were around. I just had an issue with my father as just a man to man.
Right.
And so to me, I wanted to see that reflected. So as I was crafting that, I grew up in a family-run business, kind of like the movie, where my family was started. My grandfather had a furniture store. That my grandfather had a stroke. My dad dropped out of college, took it over, just like Courtney's character in the movie. And I was sort of groomed to be I was the only boy, so I was groomed to be the next to run the store, and I didn't want to run the store. And my father had a big issue with that, and it impacted our relationship. And I went to be a writer, so I liked that construct of like a family business with like a blue collary feel, and the son wants to do something a little bit more white collar, elevated, creatively. But I knew nobody wanted to see a movie about a furniture store, and I damn sure nobody wanted to see a movie about a guy sitting at a computer typing. So I was trying to take those ideas, though, right? And like, so then I had friends of mine that had family-run restaurants. So I liked the idea of a family-run restaurant as a backdrop. And then I was really trying to find something for the son to do that felt elevated. And so at the time, I was reading all these articles about Black opera singers that had grown up listening to hip-hop and how that hip-hop had to influence their opera. Because I wanted the son to do something that the world doesn't typically expect us to be in. But
expect the unexpected.
Exactly. And so, but I couldn't break the opera version of that. So I'd never been to Europe before, and my cousin was getting married. They're like a destination wedding, and it was around my wife's and our anniversary. So I just said, look, like, let's just go. And I wasn't even a wine drinker. But I was like, it's around our anniversary. It's a cool little, like, we'll go to Paris for the first time. So I said, look, if I don't like wine in Paris, I'm just never going to like wine. It's like going to New Orleans. Like, if you don't like gumbo in New Orleans,
you ain't just going to like it.
So I signed up for this like wine class, like a wine 101 class. And the guy just made it, because wine is a world that can be like, that you can feel stupid if you start trying to say things you don't know.
That's
It's just so much stuff out there. And so
the
guy just made it really easy to understand the world of wine. And I just got super into it. And the whole trip, I just wanted to learn about wine, that whole trip. And I just started loving wine. And then I started watching documentaries about wine. I saw this documentary called Somm about it's kind of like a Hoop Dreams of wine. It's about 4 friends that are taking the master exam. And you're just kind of following their lives. I was like, oh, this world is fascinating. I was like, this should be what the son should want to do. But I don't see any Black people in this world. And then no sooner does this Black sommelier guy, candidate D. Lynn, who was one of the guys taking the test, came on screen, and I was like, oh, that's it. Now, like, I got it. Like, the son should want to be a sommelier. And then natural things connect, right? Food and wine, and barbecue is regional, wine is regional. It just made it become more interesting, and it was visual. Because I was like, oh man, what about? Because I was in Paris and I was going to the Louvre and the Orsay Museum, and I was like, man, that'd be dope to see like a Black guy bike ride through Paris, and like, I was like, I never see that in American movies. I was like, and the most we get to go to is like Miami in a movie, right? But white people get to go to, Midnight in Paris, and Diane Lane gets to be under the Tuscan sun, and they get to
come on.
And I was like, Black people travel. We go all over the world, but we don't see ourselves that way in movies. So to me, it just became much more interesting to see him go to Paris to study wine, and just to see us in spaces that we clearly are in, but don't get to see reflected. So that was, to me, what I thought was cool, was to see Black people in Paris and to do things that you don't normally associate with us.
The piece that I sent you, yes. We are definitely cut from the same cloth from that mentality and that understanding, because and it's not just about, hey, look, we here too. No,
No.
it's another perspective times two. It's number one, a different type of person holding up the lens.
Yeah.
So even if it's the same lens, it's like when Nicole said, you could put somebody in a room and you can tell them, write a story about a guy who meets a girl who meets a prince and they fall in love, and it's going to be different. So the same way, it's not just about just plopping a Black person here and there
Yeah.
just because you don't see them there.
Yeah.
It's because it's unique. It's because it's also authentic.
Yeah.
And it's because there's so much dynamic storytelling.
Yeah.
And
And
there's
to me,
go ahead,
no,
please.
no, I was going to say, to that point, like, that was one of the things that was funny, that I never wanted to comment on him wanting to do it from like a Black perspective,
Yeah.
nor was there any comment about like him in school. All the things I tried to do that showed that were like, just show the ethnic breakup of the class. Like, let's
Yes.
just, like, because I was like, we live in a
Yeah.
world right now where like we've had a Black president. You say we can't have a Black Somalian, like, and that's crazy. So like,
Right.
to me, there were execs that before we went to Netflix that were like, well, what about writing it like we should talk about from a Black perspective, and like he's a Black man in this world. And I was like, yeah, but we
Yes.
already know that. Like, that's not
Right.
that's your perception of the world. But I was
Yeah.
like, when Black people go through the world, we never
Yeah.
go through the world being like, oh man, these white people
Yeah.
holding me back. We just go in there and do what we got to do. Now we may
That's
have
right.
those conversations privately, but none of like my success will be, I don't talk about whether or not I can do something if a white person will let me do it. So the
Right.
fact that these characters would talk that way was so crazy to me, because I was like, there's a Black president. Why would this? I was like, the
Right.
dad's issue is not that he's Black. The dad is an entrepreneur. Like, the dad is a businessman. Why would he
Right.
not think his son can do this? That would be a crazy
That
point
would
of
be
view. That's
yeah,
not,
yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? So to me, it was
Exactly.
never. So when execs started saying that, I just was like, that's not what this movie is, nor is trying to be. I was like, we can have a movie that exists outside of like the white,
Yeah.
like the white dominance over the world. It has nothing to
Right.
do with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's so well done, and I find more and more that your style of storytelling, it's like it's like an oh yeah, and by the way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The jump off is not the race. The jump off is not the gender. The jump off is what's unique and what's interesting.
Yeah.
And then here's these oh by the ways that kind of come into
Yeah.
play.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I was inspired. I was inspired by the person right below me, right there. You
Not
see
at
that?
all. Not at all.
When you are writing, and of course I asked Nicole this too, as writers, what is your process? And of course, I know everybody wants to know, what is your process as it relates to Insecure and writing for Issa and all these other great characters. But just overall, what is your process? And is it different for you from project to project?
The process isn't different. The entry point might be, though.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'll start, and it doesn't really matter on Insecure. I mean, in some version, Insecure kind of, in some ways, always kind of changing because we're trying to find different ways to tell stories. So,
Mm-hmm.
but the process of getting to the truth is always the same. So the entry point might be like, I have a project right now that I'm writing that started from a character perspective. Like, this character is really interesting. So the entry point to the idea started from the character. Another thing started from a question. The entry point that made it interesting to me was that. Another project we're doing it's based on a book. So the world was the entry point. So
Right.
the way into the story will always be different based on, like, if somebody sends you an article versus if you were having a conversation with a friend and that prompted an idea, or
Mm-hmm.
you know a crazy person and you're like, what's their life like? So all
Right.
of those are always kind of different.
Right.
But the process, at least for me, is always asking, okay, now that I understand what world or place I may be going into,
Mm-hmm.
what is the story about? And then I just
Mm-hmm.
still go, what is the story about? Because it can't just be about a world. It can't just be about this sort of character. At the end of the day, it's like, that's why people watch movies or television shows or plays, is because it's the story that becomes interesting, right? Even the
Right.
character story, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
is. So I always start from, like, end of the day, what is the story? And then subtextually under that, what is this actually about? Like, what am I actually
Mm-hmm.
like unpacking on a deeper level with this story?
Yes.
So to me, it was like Uncorked. I was like, okay, I knew I had the entry point based on me, right? And then I said, but at the end of the day, I was like, what is this story about? And at the end of the day, the story was about two men that had to figure out how to understand each other who didn't know how to. So
Mm-hmm.
so then that always gave me, the scenes always have to be about two people that are wanting to get their point across and be understood by somebody else who theoretically doesn't understand them. And
Mm.
so that always became the driving force. And so that doesn't change to me what project I'm on. I still go at the end of the day, what is this about? How are as you start building up these characters, now you start getting into, well, what is this character about? And how does
Right.
this character factor into the world? And what is their purpose here to do? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you start asking yourself bigger, at least I start asking myself bigger. So, because you don't want characters to repeat, or what is their service to the story? What are they here to do?
Right.
So that's sort of how I start the process. The entry point is always different. I always try to get to what is the story about is like a log line, but what is the underneath the story that I'm actually trying to tell?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once I can tap that, then the rest kind of
Kind of
all of
falls
that,
in.
yeah, the rest kind of falls in service to that.
Yeah.
And in service to the characters who are, so if you have two characters that are like, that's at the crux of their story, well, then you factor, well, how does Nisi's character fit in? Okay, well, he has a
Mm-hmm.
mother. How does she factor in? What's her
Right.
service?
Right.
What's her service in the dynamic? What's her
Yeah.
service in the relationships? What's her service in the story? And then so on. And like you extrapolate out from there and the rippling effects of characters. But that's my part. And once I answer
Right.
that core question,
Mm-hmm.
everything branches off from there.
Oof, master class, folks. Master class. This is Prentice Penny, just a dynamic executive producer, writer, director, Emmy nominated for Insecure. And that is who we are dialoguing with. That is who I'm blessed to be working with and talking with right now. Prentice, words. Do you think that people value the power of words, or do they don't have they don't understand the real gravitas of them?
I think people who understand words really well understand it really well. I think people who don't understand it are still very much affected by it. So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot understand the power of it. Because sometimes there are people who don't understand the words they use and don't understand why people respond the way they respond. A lot of times when people just kind of fly off at the handle and quick with the mouth, and sometimes like they don't understand how this might actually have some real ramifications. And then there are
Yeah.
people that totally understand the power of words and use them for good or manipulation. I mean, you can obviously see that in our country right now by some people in leadership, they understand words very well, and they're
Mm-hmm.
very specific on how they use those words, right? And
Right.
some people respond to those words knowingly,
Mm-hmm.
and some respond unknowingly. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's true about anything that you're doing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're in politics, whether you're in poetry, whether you're in any form where words are the dominating force,
Mm-hmm.
that you fully understand that. So I think that if you don't know the power of words, you're fully impacted by the power of words for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you were growing up, were you always writing? Were you the kind of young person that journaled, or did you kind of fall into this?
I always used to like to write. I grew up pretty much an only child. I have a half sister, but I didn't grow up with. She was born much later. But yeah, I always spent because I had because my mom went back to law school when my parents split. And my dad had we had a furniture store business. So, but I had old, like 1980s grandparents, like not grandparents now where they're cool and they out there being active. I had them grandparents that like watch the news from 3 to 7, then watch Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. I had those, like they wasn't and it wasn't out in the streets, grandparents. It was old
Right.
grandparents. But I used to spend a lot of time, like, like writing and making, like, I had to. I was the only kid. So I had to kind of
Mm-hmm.
grow up, or with my cousins were around, doing that and writing stories. But
Right.
it's interesting. And I don't just say this because I'm talking to you. But the truth is when my parents split to the point of writing, My mom was very much a person, if it's like white, it's right. So whatever white kids do, you're gonna do. And my dad was very much like, you're gonna do everything in Compton because that's where our furniture is. He's like, you're gonna be black everything. So my mom took me to therapy because she was like, my dad was like, he's not doing therapy. My mom was like, I'm taking him to therapy because he could be damaged by this. So the therapist was like, you need to write. Like, you should write. You should write your thoughts out. And at the time, when my parents split, they had an agreement, which was if I lived in a black neighborhood, I had to go to a black school. And but during the summer, I had to do stuff with white kids. So I went to an all-white summer camp in the Valley. So growing up, I'm listening to like LL Cool J and Lamert Park and View Park.
Right.
And in the summertime, I'm getting shipped out to the summer camp in the Valley doing like lacrosse. And they're listening to like the Bangles and Billy Idol. I didn't know that stuff. And then I would go back to school.
Shut up, man.
I didn't know that stuff. So I spent all summer listening to like Culture Club and the Police.
Right.
And I go back to school and I'd be like, hey, you guys know John Cougar Mellencamp? They're like, get the fuck out of here with that. So like, and that was my whole life. And that was my whole like 8 years.
Right.
But
you love Sting like me, don't you? Don't you love Sting?
Yeah. Oh, I love Sting. I was listening to the Police this morning. So like, that's not even, yeah. But this is no lie. But to the point of representation and power, watching, and this is no lie. I mean, it's true. I would be journaling about. It was tough when I first had to go to those. Eventually, I figured out how to be comfortable in environments, and I was the only one. I mean, sadly, I hate that was the case, but I just had to figure it out. But watching you on Facts of Life, being like this black girl going to this all-white prep school, that's how it felt. Like I was like, but you just like the character was just living. Right? Like, it was just like, she wasn't like, you know, obviously, if you were doing that show now, probably you're doing it from a different perspective. But as a kid watching that imagery of being like, oh, this little girl's the only one here. And she's doing okay. Like, and I would write about some of that stuff too. And like, to the point of the power of words and representation, like those things matter. And so seeing you like that and other things like that would really help me express myself in a way that I really didn't necessarily know how to, because my friends weren't in that environment. Only I was. So it felt isolating. It felt alone. So wanting to talk about that and seeing you like that and be able to start to use words to express myself was a huge help. And discovering what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I done lost what I was going to say next. My goodness, you done. We are wrapping up because we are just about out of time. Again, we're with Prentice Penny. This chat is being brought to you by Refresh by KF, my lifestyle brand, where we try to refresh others. And so that being said, what do you find are the most encouraging things that we can say to one another during this time, especially man to man? I mean, not man to man, because, you know, but you know, when you are dude to dude, let alone just human to human.
I think right now, the most important thing we can do really actually is like hearing other people's words. I think that's a big problem right now, is sometimes we've been in this space where we're like, we want to be heard. And there's truth to that for sure. But I think a lot of our problems come from like not hearing what other people are actually saying. How are they using their words? Like it's interesting, the whole Colin Kaepernick thing 3 years ago, he was saying the same thing he's saying now.
Today.
But people are hearing it differently now.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's the same, to your point, it's the same words. It's you are choosing to listen differently. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think we can do is like stop trying to push our words and the things we want to be right on, and let me just listen to other people's words, how they're saying it, the absence of what they're leaving out, how they're choosing to emphasize certain words. Like all those things matter. You know, language matters. Language is important. Yeah. And so I think listening right now is one of the biggest things I think we need to do, man to man, woman to woman, person to person, race to race, whatever. There just needs to be a lot more listening right now.
Yes. Ooh, yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. That is a great. Kira, I know that you're watching right now. She is my partner in Refresh by KF. Kira, let us please do some sort of video and graphic with listen as the word for the week. Okay. Compliments of our new and dear friend and brother, Prentice Penny. Thank you so much.
Of course,
for
anytime.
being here. I'm so thrilled and blessed to know you. Let me just start with that, let alone to have uttered words that even if you weren't the writer of the episode, that you at least, gave the blessing to as the executive producer. But you are so incredibly, uniquely gifted and talented.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
And we don't take you for granted. We don't take your gifts for granted, you and Issa, but also you individually. I sincerely appreciate you as a storyteller and all facets of that. So, and as a human being. Yeah.
Well, same here. And yeah, I don't mean this lightly. I was literally on a thing today with some Black African American film students from USC, and they were talking about like as you work your way up and opportunities you get and people you're able to connect to. And I was saying the beauty of like you continue to just grind it out is you meet the people that inspired you. And so when you say that to me, I'm just like stunned because I remember watching you on so much. The list of your IMDb can't even run, and your mother and your sister. I mean, you guys are such a part of my life that, like, for you to say that is like bugging me out right now. I'm like, yo, I know Kim feels it. I just say she appreciates me. I was like, no, she didn't. So everything you just said, I echo to you, like to your mom and your sister, and like what you guys have done is amazing and a blessing, and we're all incredibly blessed the same way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, brother.
You
Thank
too.
you.
You
Thank you.
too.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And good luck with your Emmy nominations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
We will
you.
be listening for them to say your name and
Well,
the
there we
name
go.
Insecure. But thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Kim.
really appreciate you. Love to
Absolutely.
the
Stay safe.
family, honey. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Ooh, my goodness. Okay. So, of course, IG is saying we have a minute 5 remaining. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's chat by Refresh by KF. Nicole Burnham, Prentice Penny, thank you so much for sharing a piece of your Saturday with us. Thank you for sharing your words with us over the years of your wonderful career. And this will be on not only my IG, but also at Refresh by KF. Have a fantastic weekend. Tomorrow, right here, we also have the incomparable Andrew Young. So please remember to come by here tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, and we'll be chopping it up with the one and only Andrew Young. Have a great weekend, guys.